all of these things cannot work well when your cortisol is elevated. And it's kind of hard to believe that one thing can mess so many things up, but it's true.
Hey there, welcome back to Evolving Ageless. This is the enlightened woman's antidote to aging. And I'm your host, Michelle Dreilich, and I am on a mission, you've heard it, to change the way women age. And not by making massive, drastic, difficult overnight changes, but by making small little steps along the way that have a huge impact on the way we age. Each week, I'm joined by experts in their field, and this week is a super special week. My guest today is probably the poster, and I'm going to step out and call her the poster bombshell for living ageless. My guest today is Dr. Venus. Dr. Venus is a brilliant physician. She's an inspiring and ageless woman, and she not only has academic and professional accolades from Yale, University of Miami, UC Irvine. The list goes on, but she shows up and backs it up each and every day in her own clinical practice in Southern California. She's competed herself for over 20 years as a national level fitness athlete. You may have seen her on American Gladiators, regularly on The Doctors, and she's also been contributing to Oxygen magazine for quite some time. So what an exciting day. So glad to meet you, Dr. Venus.
Well, thank you so much. I am so happy to be here.
That's terrific. So today, I know we've talked about stress all the time, but I also know, and I've heard it in responses coming back when we ask you what the biggest challenges are, what we hear all the time is, I'm struggling with this aspect of my life. I'm struggling with navigating, these stressful events that are happening in my life. And so, knowing that this is happening to women, Dr. Venus, around the country, we tend to give lip service to stress as being a factor in just about anything. We just kind of, as women, bear down, right? And think of it as grit. And we don't give it the attention that it needs. So I would love to hear your perspective, what you're seeing in your clinical practice. And let's just jump right in and talk about the topic of stress.
Stress does so much to the body, and I think that the importance of it isn't stressed enough. I think that we all feel that, everyone has stress. We just got to deal with it and move on. And the thing is, we don't really deal with it. We just say it's there, but we don't really do anything about it. We just keep trying to press on. And I think that's something we need to really focus on, is that we can't just keep pressing on without actually dealing with it, managing it. Because stress is something that humans have been dealing with their entire lives. And the processes with which the body actually manages and handles stress has not changed, but we're not necessarily doing the things that we were initially evolved to how to manage it appropriately so that we could continue to live full, healthy, and happy lives.
Oh, for sure. So it used to be, right? We were chased by bears or chased by tigers, or other villages were attacking our village. Those were periods of stress that we had to deal with in society. And so nowadays, right, it's, I lost my keys, I'm late to a meeting, my car broke down or something, and or my son is late to baseball or whatever, right? And it sends us off into that same stress response that we had when it was legitimately life-threatening.
What we initially were evolved to be doing is running away or fighting. All these things require your heart rate to go up. They require your blood pressure to go up so that your oxygen can get to your muscles and your brain. Um, those are two definitely key things that need to be oxygenated when you're fighting or fleeing. Um, it's going to release the glucose so that your body can use it for fighting or fleeing. These are things that happen to your body, but when you're not appropriately managing the stress, then these things hang around and they become a more chronic issue. You start to develop things like cardiovascular disease. You may start developing things like diabetes. And those are just the two things I mentioned with the heart rate, blood pressure, and the glucose. There's so much more that is actually affected when your cortisol level goes up because of chronically elevated stress levels. When you're chronically elevated as far as your cortisol goes, it's a whole body effect. And that's exactly what I see in my clinic every day. I see patients who are feeling overwhelmed. They are manifesting it in real pain in their lives. And as a rehab physician, I really see that getting in the way of them getting better, feeling better, reducing their pain, and essentially being able to get on with their lives in, again, a healthy and happy way.
Yeah. And so how does it so what you're saying, I never connected the oxygenation, right? Because we think of having extra oxygen as positive. It's a good thing. But oxygen we know is ages us in massive quantities, right? So the need for antioxidants, right? So wow, that's clever. I never thought about the idea that having cortisol in your body. So we know that, right? Everyone knows that cortisol is the stress hormone that kind of kicks all this off, and it has a downstream effect of dumping glucose so that you can run or think through a problem, right? Because that's what sugar drives our brain.
Mhm.
And so, but the extra oxygen is not always a good thing either. So for women, let's just call it out. When they present in your office, right? When we come in and we're dealing with a lot of stress, some of the first places that we start to see it, right, are probably a little bit of extra weight gain around the middle. Yeah, is
Mhm.
that for me? I think that's I'm 51, and it was like that was the first thing I noticed, like, oh boy, look at that. It's starting to build up around the middle, which for me is a sign of glucose, right? So let's start there for women. They start to notice these changes in their bodies that we will directly tie to stress.
Yes, when you have elevated cortisol levels on a chronic basis, I'll say this: a normal elevation and decrease of your cortisol is supposed to happen in your body. There are good things about cortisol. You're supposed to have normal elevations of your cortisol throughout the day, and they're supposed to decrease, and they should not stay chronically elevated. We need cortisol in order to do things like fight off infections, heal wounds. Cortisol is very important for that initial response, the inflammation that is actually needed to help protect your body. But when things are working correctly, that cortisol then backs down, the inflammation backs down, and you have the normal highs and lows that should occur in your body. Now, when people are having elevated stress levels and they're not bringing down those stress levels on a regular basis, then the cortisol is not allowed to come down on a regular basis at the normal rate. And you start to develop all of the symptoms that can happen as a result of chronically elevated cortisol. Oftentimes, cortisol, as I mentioned, can affect a whole slew of things in your body from head to toe. And of course, the one that we do notice is what you just brought up, the one, your midsection. So I won't even start with the head or the toe. We'll go right to the midsection. Cortisol can cause you to have cravings for fats and sugars, and those are exactly the things that um, can cause you to develop a heavier middle. Cortisol in itself is just related to more midsection fat to develop. And then there is, of course, the fact that I brought up earlier regarding putting sugar into your system. When you're constantly doing that in order to fight off an attacker or run away from an attacker, uh, that's okay because the sugar is getting used. When that sugar is not being used and the body is not able to get rid of it, you start to develop things like insulin resistance, which a lot of people may be somewhat familiar with that term, but that's the condition that can start to lead to the development of diabetes. So here you have the development of an actual chronic disease. But even before that, just having any little bit of resistance to insulin is going to put you at risk for developing obesity.
Wow. So that's it. That's the connection, right? Where how it kind of starts. And the good news, I think, about this is that it's a very obvious sign, right? It's something that, and it doesn't happen quickly overnight where it gets out of control very quickly. We as women have a nice little warning sign there that says, oh, this is a sign that I'm either eating way too many processed or sugary foods or I'm not handling my stress well. And
Mhm.
there's a difference, right? Handling my stress, because I just want to be clear. I think the reason why women especially, we're such full of such grit that we don't think of stress as something that we can get rid of. So I just want to say that's a sign that you're not handling it well, because we're going to get to what we can do about it in a few minutes. But I think, so what a great wake up call, right? I remember when I was younger, Special K used to have this commercial like pinch an inch, which is what a joke now, right? Because most of Americans can pinch way more than an inch. But this
Plenty of
idea
inches.
that that's a sign, yeah, that's a sign that you're just not managing your stress well, and or your diet has kind of gotten out of control. So, what starts to happen? So, we talked about the development of diabetes, but also I think muscle plays a role in there too, right? Because at this point, this could lead to muscle loss as well.
Absolutely. I think that there are just so many factors that go into your body being able to do the things that it was supposed to do: process the nutrients appropriately, absorb them through the gut, process them through all of the organs that it's supposed to, your liver and such, and get those nutrients to where they need to go in the body, and again, process them correctly. All of these things cannot work well when your cortisol is elevated. And it's kind of hard to believe that one thing can mess so many things up, but it's true. We have very complicated network of systems in our body. When you have these complicated processes going on in your body and one feeds back into the other, this can cause an elevated cortisol level, can cause your thyroid hormone to go down. And your thyroid hormone, is a major regulator of your metabolism. The pounds start creeping on that in that manner. You have a whole host of different neurotransmitters and hormones that feed back on each other and cause innumerable effects on the body. Um, One thing that I like to point out: we're all stressed out and we're running around trying to do crazy things in life, trying to keep up with a crazy schedule in any way. And let's say you run into a room, you're trying to figure out where you're going, and I'm doing a good description and demonstration of that.
Right.
And as you run into that room, you say, "Hey, why did I just get into this room? Why did I come here?" These are little signs that maybe you're a little too stressed out. That those little memory issues those are signs that perhaps your cortisol level has started to elevate. That's because cortisol actually affects the hippocampus in the brain, and that's where you encode your memories. And when that happens, things like, I can't remember where I put my keys, things like that happen. I can't remember why I just ran into this room. Things like that happen. So these are all the little signs that can start to pop up. Hey, maybe I'm not managing this well. The elevated cortisol level can start to decrease your serotonin levels. That's, we all know, is the happy hormone.
Yes.
So it's actually going to affect your mood. Serotonin and dopamine are affected. Those are neurotransmitters which can affect your mood. Well, we all know as practitioners that serotonin is developed in the gut. Your immune system is such a big part of the gut. And when all of that is residing there and not feeling well because your cortisol level is elevated, then you start developing issues with uh, not only your mood because of the serotonin, then you start developing issues with your immune system. You can't fight off infections well. Maybe you're starting to catch colds more often. Um, and then you start developing issues with your actual gut not functioning the way it should, not absorbing the things it should. And then you get that leaky gut syndrome that people talk about sometimes, which can lead to a lot of other problems and inflammation in your body. And again, hey, the immune system has been affected and weakened. So again, you have this whole cycle, complicated cycle of things happening in your body.
It's amazing. And I think it sounds like, when we're younger, we're in a building mode, right? Our bodies are what we call anabolic, right? We're building, we're growing, we're building bone, we're building muscle, you know, and then as we age, that slows down, peaks, and then starts to slow down. And even we become more breakdown instead of more build, right? And so the timing, and it's not, that's why when we talk about it as being like an older woman or an older person's challenge, or as we age, it ages us faster. It's predominantly likely because we're in a breakdown mode to begin with. And so we're trying to combat our bodies slowing down, and we become more what we call catabolic, right? We're breaking things down slowly, but this just compounds it and makes it happen much faster when we start pouring cortisol onto this like slow aging process, because we're all going to age. That's not the problem. We know that. It's how we age. And it sounds like that cortisol is like the kerosene on the fire for aging, right? Because we're not in that building mode anymore. We don't handle it well like we did when we were younger.
Exactly. It starts breaking things down and not allowing things to continue to build.
Yeah, I love that. So it just worsens the process. So okay, so you've got, you work with patients every day and help them heal. And this is one of the major areas for women. I know that. So let's talk about your advice. What's your best advice for people that are struggling with stressful situations? Because I know that they tell you all the time, I can't get rid of my stress. I'm too busy. Or some of them wear it on their sleeve like a badge of honor, right? We're kind of taught to do that. Suck it
Mhm.
up, buttercup, that kind of stuff. So what do we
Yes,
do?
there are so many things that you can do, but I like to keep things really simple because what I find, especially in my patient population, in my colleagues, my female professional colleagues, we are all stressed out. And we often do it to ourselves. We want to be able to do a lot of things. We want to be there for our families. We want to excel in our careers. We jam pack our schedules and we like it that way. But we don't necessarily leave time for managing stress. And that's the big complaint I have. I don't have time to sit in a yoga class. I don't have time to meditate for an hour. And the thing is, you don't have to do that. There are ways of managing stress that aren't going to take up a lot of time in your life. And the one thing I like to always start with is, do you have time to take a breath? That's such a simple thing to do. And the research is there. It shows that deep breathing can bring down your cortisol levels. So even if you just take a couple of minutes, just even a minute or two, just to take some deep breaths, you can bring down your cortisol levels in that moment. And again, there are fluctuations in your cortisol level, but when you're not allowing that fluctuation to occur, when you're not allowing it to come down, that's where the trouble begins. So I say, take a breath. That's your first step. Just take a breath and then take another one. So
Oh, that's great.
10 slow, deep breaths. If you can just try to do that in the middle of your day, that can do so much for you. I actually like to teach the 4-7-8 breath, and that's inhale for a count of 4, hold your breath for a count of 7, and then exhale for a count of 8. And when you do that, you're actually putting a lot of emphasis and focus on your exhalation more than your inhalation. And that really triggers your parasympathetic system in your body. And that's the one that's going to help bring your body into a more restful state. Slow your heart rate down, bring your blood pressure down. Those good things for those more frenzied, chaotic, stressful states.
I love that. And it's so simple 4-7-8. If people just remember 4-7-8, and honestly, give it a try because you can actually feel your body let go. You can feel yourself calm down. There's so many people I know their shoulders are up around their ears and they don't even realize it. And when you lengthen that exhale over the inhale, that's when you can actually feel yourself calm down. There's a lot of science behind it. There's a lot of, there are machines you could be hooked up to. There's something called heart math where you get coherent. And that breath actually will absolutely bring you into a much more balanced, resolved kind of place. I love it. That's a great, great idea and a great place to start. And one thing people can do is just set the timer on their phone just for a couple times a day, to just make sure that they're doing it. Super simple.
Super, super simple. And a quick little thing that you could do that's actually going to make a difference.
I love it. So what else? Where else do we go from there?
There's so many things that you can implement that are just small little things to focus on in your life. This is a big one right now, especially, but human connection. That's another thing that has been shown to be able to decrease your cortisol levels. So being able to actually reach out and give someone a hug can bring down your cortisol levels. So reach out to a family member, give them a real hug. That can help you out. And there's actually some evidence that doing some social connection, even on Facebook, and I'm talking about real connection. I'm not just talking about, hey, a little like, but even some sort of a connection with people that you know, even on social media, can actually start to bring down your cortisol levels, just feeling connected in some way. And that's really, really important right now.
And it feels like, given the tone or the time that we're living in right now, this time of COVID, where we've been somewhat isolated from other humans, and we're definitely not connecting in a physical way as much without, our inner circle maybe, but, culturally, I'm a hugger. Like when I go out with my friends, I'm hugging, and without that, we have to be mindful that it's just not happening in our lives right now.
trying to be very vocal about my connection with others is something I try to elevate more. I tend to want to do something when I'm saying goodbye to someone. I want to be able to give them a hug. And I know that I can't quite do that at this time, but I try to be very, very verbal, very, very vocal about my genuine interest in who they are and that I really care about what's going on in their lives with every interaction that I have. And in that respect, there is a little bit more that can be done when you're talking more with people and really connecting in that way.
I love that. That's so simple, right? We can all just be mindful about the way we focus our intent on speaking with other people and letting them know. I love that idea that, I would hug you right now if I could. That's just as good as a hug in some
Exactly.
ways, right? It's letting people know that
Be
you
vocal
care.
about it. Don't be afraid to speak it up, because sometimes it's easy to give the hug, and sometimes when you're known as a hugger, people may not even think about that as much. But when you're
Mm,
actually vocally speaking it, those words can actually bring a little bit of a deeper meaning for the other person.
I love that. That's a really great tip. Okay, so connection, right? So we talked about breathing, the 478. We talked about connection, even just texting someone and checking in on them,
Mm-hmm.
and then physical contact if you can, which is interesting. I wonder if that's part of it for women. As our kids are getting older, I've got a 16 and a 14-year-old. The hugs are a little less frequent now than they were when they were little, climbing on me. So I bet that's a part of it as women as we get older, that there's less of that.
That that's definitely part of it, I think.
Mm.
Definitely a connection can be made there.
Yeah, that's great. And so when should someone, and I want to make sure we cover this as well, because we've got these great tips, little hinges swing big doors. We make these little changes and they will have an impact over time. What happens, what advice do you give for people that, like, if this sounds like you should call your doctor? Because we are, like I said, we're in a really strange time right now, and I know people are avoiding potentially going into a doctor, but there are times where you just connecting with a practitioner makes the most sense for some people. So what are some of the signs that you urge people to, if it's you or maybe a friend or a loved one, that you can help out and let them know, hey, because people that are in a deep hole in that stressful place, they may not see it, and we can see it for them too. So what should we be looking for? What are signs that someone should call their doctor?
Well, there's some of the more obvious signs when you're talking about physically not feeling well, when you're really feeling that your heart is racing on a consistent basis. That's something that you should be very concerned about and perhaps call your doctor. There's times when your blood pressure may be elevated. And I will say this, I have a genetic predisposition having high blood pressure. Both my parents have that. And I actually developed high blood pressure even as a fitness athlete. Watching what I was eating, I developed high blood pressure, and if it weren't for a accidental needle stick in the hospital where I was sent to employee health in order to get all the tests and such that you're supposed to do, they happened to take my blood pressure and saw it was through the roof, and we all just laughed it off. Oh, the machine must be broken. Then they checked the other arm, and it was still through the roof. So I myself developed high blood pressure, and I can only assume that the stress of my job at that time was contributing. And I felt nothing, no
Mm.
dizzy spells, no headaches, no buzzing in my head, nothing. So this is something you really need to be careful with. But if you do feel things like lightheadedness or um, persistent headaches. These are signs that perhaps you should see your physician, or at least call your physician to talk about it. When you wake up in the morning, if you feel unmotivated, if you're just feeling like there's nothing you really want to do, and oh my gosh, this is the same old day that I'm going to go through again, these are signs that maybe there's something more going on. If this is happening on a regular basis and there's really nothing that's making you look forward to your day each and every morning, perhaps you should take a look, call up your doctor and say, I haven't been feeling good for a while. It's not necessarily normal or just part of life to feel like I'm bored, there's nothing going on.
Just to lose all kind of motivation
interest.
or
Yeah.
interest. Yeah, right. Dr. Venus, you are so like, you take these hard, difficult, challenging concepts and you make it just so easy to understand and so easy to follow along. Dr. Venus has created the 15-minute Better Body Blueprint, and she's making it available to all of us. If you go to the show notes for this show on evolvingageless.com, there's a link there so that you can download the 15-minute Better Body Blueprint and start, taking control of your stress in your life, but also start moving forward. Again, making small changes at enhancing the way we look and feel and live. And so I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your very busy day. It's super early for you in California, so I really appreciate this.
Absolutely, not a problem. I am so happy that I was able to come on and share this with your listeners.
Wonderful. All right, so there you have it. Make sure you check out the Better Body Blueprint on evolvingageless.com. And again, 478, give someone a hug, reach out and connect. There are things that we can do, just small things that actually have a big
Play some
impact.
music, laugh. These are all simple things that can decrease your cortisol levels.
I love it. It's wonderful. What wonderful advice. And so lucky to have you here and to share your incredible wisdom with our audience. So I will be back same time next week with a new guest with a different perspective on, again, small changes to make a huge impact on the way we age. So for now, keep on living ageless, and I'll see you here next week.